Osho, Osho. So, Vikrant,
Yes.
we are very much happy about your acceptance to participate in our program, and we welcome you. Okay,
Thank you.
so we
Happy to be
always,
here with you guys. I didn't know you, so I'm really happy to talk about my experience and anything you might be interested.
yes, sure, we are very happy. First question we always ask all our guests is, how did Osho come into your life, and what happened next?
Well, I was 17 years old. I'm 55 now. I was 17 years old, and I was what you would call like a group leader in a Christian grassroots community in the lines of the liberation theology, which was a Marxist interpretation of the Christian Catholic religion at that time. So I was part of this group, and I had been throughout my teenage years. And the man who was the head of this Catholic community was a social worker and was very interested in humanistic psychology. And doing some groups in humanistic psychology, he was invited to a marathon group led by a sannyasin, where they were doing Osho meditations and things like that. And this was absolutely mind-blowing for him. So he started leading groups too. And he trained with this sannyasin psychologist. So he started leading groups. And I had heard about it, but I really didn't know. And it was my last year in this Catholic community. And I was invited to a night marathon, like a therapeutic marathon. I didn't know anything about it back then, just a Catholic boy. And well, and I didn't know it was an Osho meditation. And we did the mandala meditation on that very night. And I mean, this whole group was life transforming for me. It was just one night, and I was totally blown away by what I lived there. You know, during the mandala meditation, I feel rage coming up to me, and a pillow was given to me, and I was beating pillow. I had never done anything remotely like that, but I got in touch with a space within myself that I didn't know. And then he decided to do another workshop, and that was going to last, I don't know, it only lasted 7 sessions, and it was just done in the Sanya Center that was at that time in Chile. And then I didn't know about Osho or meditation or anything. I was just a Catholic boy doing what I wanted to do in that sense. And I went to this group and I saw this picture of Osho, and it's like, oh my God, what is this? Looks like the Hare Krishnas. And so so I participated in this group, and we were doing Osho meditations, and then we would talk and work therapeutically about the contents of what would come up during the active meditation, like Kundalini, dynamic, mandala. We didn't do passive meditations at that time. And again, this was, I mean, on one side, I felt totally touched in a very profound way. And on the other side, I didn't like this idea of an Indian guru. You know, I wasn't into that. I was Catholic. You know, I was into the church. That was my thing. And then I started to read Osho, and this was really funny because everything that Osho said made absolutely sense to me, but it went against everything that I believed. So in the night, I would pray to God if he would please kill Osho, because what he was saying was, you know, shaking me to my roots. You know, this was in 1985. And then what happened was that I went to
What was
study
the
to
book? What was the
uh,
book you read?
the book that was talks about Jesus. Come and follow me.
Mustard seed?
Hmm?
Mustard
No,
seed?
come and follow me.
Come and follow
Was
me. Okay.
come and
Follow
follow
me.
me.
Okay.
Yeah, the discourses on Jesus. And I had never read so much wisdom and so much understanding of what I thought was understanding back then about Jesus' life, like what Osho was saying. And I was shaken. I was completely shaken. And then I went into another group. This group was going to be longer, also led by a sannyasi. And I went into this group. I was Catholic. I was virgin. I was 20 years old back then, and hoping to get married. You know, like to
Okay.
have kids, a normal family. And a year later, I wasn't virgin anymore. I didn't believe in God. I wasn't Catholic anymore, and I had completely fallen in love with Osho. And I decided to take sannyas. That was 1988, and I went to live in a sannyas community that existed at that time here in Chile, and I lived 4 years with them.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's how it happened to me. It was
Wow.
I resisted as much as I could, but but my heart was taken,
Yeah.
and I had this feeling that I've heard other people saying that every time I heard Osho speak or I read something from him, I had the feeling that he was addressing me personally. You know, I don't probably you have that feeling
Yes, yes.
like
You know.
Yes,
he's
yes, we
putting
know.
words to something that I have felt all my life, but I couldn't articulate in language. You
Mhm.
know, it was like, I know this, you know, it's been here all the time. And suddenly someone is speaking about it and putting it out in words. And I had that for me, it was darshan, you know, it was like this connection with this energy and with this incredible man, you know, that was at that time that I was still alive in Pune.
Mm.
Yes.
That's how I came
And
to Osho.
and what's the meaning of your name?
As the name is Swami Anand Vikrant, and that means the victory of bliss.
Mm.
Wow.
Nice.
Yes.
Strong.
Yeah.
Very strong.
And it felt like that actually. And it actually felt like that. And it was it was so funny because after this workshop, you know, I went on holidays to the beach, and I was talking to friends and saying, I have finally found what I've been looking for my whole life, which was this profound sense of something that went beyond happiness, that was bliss, that it didn't depend on what was happening outside of myself, you know, because I knew what it was to be happy, you know, when I did
Mhm.
things that I liked or when things happened in the way that I liked. But
Mhm.
this feeling of finding a space within myself that was blissful, independently of what was happening outside, that was what I had been looking for my whole life. And so I sent this letter to Osho, and I was talking about this, you know, while I was waiting for the answer. And then the answer came, and the name was The Victory of Bliss. And even today, when I remember about it, I feel touched. You know, it was
Mm.
such a moving moment for me.
Wow. Osho was in Pune at that time, yeah?
It was in
Already.
Pune, yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah. You
yeah,
was in Pune at the time, né, Biro?
Yes, I was
88.
there.
yeah,
In 88, I was in Pune.
yeah.
Since I heard Osho was poisoned, it was a kind of rush for me to go there, yeah.
Yeah.
But we are talking about you, so.
Yes.
Could you tell us a little about your life as a sannyasi?
Well,
Communes, more
I
communes?
at that time, yeah, I was studying to be a sculptor. I hadn't trained yet as a psychotherapist,
Hmm.
and I lived in the commune. And I was very young. I went in the mornings to the art school, and then I would go work as a waiter in a restaurant. In the evening, I would come back to the commune, and it was fantastic. I mean, we were all very young. The oldest guy was 23, and we would meditate together and have little sort of encounter groups together and
Mm.
share how we were feeling and trying to manage life outside our original families. And it was a fantastic time, very difficult for me because we were very poor. Although most of us came from what I would say pretty well off families, but we cut ties with the families. And for me, I was participating in every therapy group that would happen in Chile that was in the line of Osho's work. and also meditate, you know. And that was for me, I mean, I was experimenting at that time. I mean, didn't have the access to media like you have now. So you had the Kundalini meditation tape, which was a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy, you know. And we were doing, and
In a
sometimes
cassette, né?
in
Cassette
a
tape.
cassette, yeah.
Yes.
And in the beginning, we didn't even have the music, so we would do the meditations without the music. You know, imagine we did dynamic. We didn't know about the music back then, and we would do dynamic, you know, in a forest or places like
In
that.
silence. In
Inside,
silence.
just counting the, okay, you do this for 10 minutes. Okay, we do it for 10 minutes.
Like
That's
a
great.
warrior.
Yeah,
That's great. Was it the time of dictatorship
yeah,
in
we were
Chile
in
yet?
dictatorship. Yeah, full
Yeah.
on. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, we were, I mean, I was very much politically involved most of my teenage years, but by this time, 1988, I had already grown pretty disillusioned of politics as a way of solving human suffering, so to speak. You know, I was a leftist revolutionary, and I remember when I used to have these political meetings, I would look around and we would talk about the new man. You know, that was a very Marxist concept, the new man. And I would look around and say, who the hell is going to be the new man here? You know, we are all escaping from our own problems, focusing on who else needs help, but we don't have our shit together, you know. And I had this profound feeling that I was escaping from my own problems through focusing on helping the others. And I found that so dishonest with myself that I got fed up with this whole trip. And I went completely for a while. I mean, then I reintegrated both dimensions, but then I said, no, fuck it. I mean, I'm just going to focus on my own transformation. I'm going to focus on my work on myself. And then if something comes out and I have something real to share, then I will do it. And then that happened later when I trained as a psychotherapist.
yes, I asked you about the dictatorship because of your meetings for meditation. Did you have to do it secretly, or how was it?
Well,
No?
not really, because at that time, I mean, already there was a huge movement that it was pushing for the government to change. So they were sort of opening up a little bit more. I mean, we would have problems like, I don't know, doing dynamic meditation and then the police showing up, you know, and then having to explain. I remember showing them the cassette when we had the music, you know, and said, look, see these structures here? It says, you know, scream, cathart, jump up and down, or things like that. But no, mostly I don't think we had. I think earlier it was a bit more difficult for sannyas. And in fact, I have a friend that it was at the beginning, I think, of the 80s. I think it was 82, that he wrote a letter to Osho when Osho was at the ranch saying, look, we're being massacred here. You know, we have the dictatorship breathing on our necks. And then they got a letter back, I mean, probably from Osho through Sheila, saying, okay, leave Chile and go live in the European communes. And Osho opened a venue for many Chilean sannyasins in the early 80s to go and live in the communes, escape the dictatorship.
Yes, I remember. I had in Pune a Chilean friend, Sangita, and she told me about going into the streets and bombs and everything.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, let's
Yes.
go ahead. I've heard your interview to Swaram in Love Osho podcast.
Yeah.
And you did a great research on
Yeah.
Osho's influence on therapeutic as a tool to human growth, yeah? Joining together East and West. Could you tell us a little about that, of your research?
Yeah. Well, this was a research that was done pre-internet years. I mean, recently, last year, it came out, the English version of the book. And it was funny when I was checking the translation and adding information to the book, I thought, oh my God, if I would have had internet, I would have done this research in 8 months. It took me 10 years to do
Wow.
the research.
Wow.
From 1995 to 2005. And what I did basically was, I did a whole research of how humanistic psychology started in the United States, how it went to Europe, and how later on, all these leading figures of the human potential movement went
Yes.
to Pune to work with Osho. And for me, it was very interesting because when I studied in the United States. So when I was studying in the United States, I would read or hear names of some famous therapists, and I would say, hey, I remember this guy. I've heard this name before. And I would look and say, but this guy was with Osho. And many of them, then they went their own way, and some of them were not even acknowledging the fact that they had been with Osho and they had studied with him and they had led groups in the Pune ashram during the 70s. So I decided to do a whole research of how this happened, and how Osho's understanding of human psyche was a huge influence in the development of humanistic transpersonal psychology. Not so much from an academic point of view, but in fact of the tools that were used and how he did this integration of Western psychotherapy and Eastern meditation techniques and mysticism. So I talked to lots of people, I traveled, I found people lost in Thailand somewhere, and I did a whole research on their personal stories too, which was for me what was interesting, not only the technical academic stuff, but how the conversations that they had with Osho, for instance, what Osho
Wow.
would tell them about how to work in their groups and how to lead them, and their personal conflicts and the jealousies that they had with the other therapists in the Pune ashram. And so it was really, for me, it was really interesting. And the original book in Spanish, which was published, I think, in 2005, was the first edition. Up to this moment is used all over Latin America in the universities to teach humanistic psychology.
Wow.
What's the
Yeah.
name of the book?
The book in English is From Esalen to Pune.
Yes.
Esalen is the first growth center that happened in the world. From Esalen to Pune, Osho and the Path of Humanistic Transpersonal Psychology.
Wow. Where
Yeah.
do we get this? Amazon?
I want this book.
Well, in Amazon, you can find it in Amazon. And if you send me your address, I can send you a copy of the English book or the Spanish
Yeah.
as you wish. And if you type it, there are several companies, let's say, that are selling it all over the world.
But
So,
I want an autograph on the book.
of course, I would send me your address and I'll autograph it for
Okay.
you.
So
Ah,
I buy the book and send to your address. Is that
Yes,
so?
of course. No,
Yeah.
I haven't.
Please.
Okay. So we have to arrange that.
And one thing that was interesting for me, there was a part of this book that I also wanted to be as an expose of the therapists that were with Osho, that learned with Osho, and they didn't acknowledge later on their stories or their learning process with him. So I wanted to say, hey, look, these wonderful techniques or this wonderful knowledge and understanding didn't come out of nowhere. They were with Osho for 2, 3, 4, 13 years, and that's how they became who they were.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Hmm. Wow.
In your vision, what happened to those people that they didn't acknowledge Osho?
Well,
was the
well, if you
thing?
think of Osho, he's not the most popular,
Mhm.
guru. I mean, Osho was an iconoclast. People usually have this tendency to want to see him as a saint, like of the Eastern fairy tales. But Osho was an iconoclast. This guy was not somebody who would be easily accepted by my grandmother.
Mm.
Yes.
He was a rebel. and he was somebody
Mhm.
who challenged all the existing structures of society. He spoke against what people had in their heart as the most dear things. He spoke against religion. He spoke against a nuclear family. I mean,
Yes, politics.
and against the politicians. And
Mm.
I don't think there's anyone he actually spared. He spoke against other enlightened master. So
Yes.
I don't think it would have been the best PR for anyone to use Osho as a reference of in your own curriculum vitae, so to speak. You know? When I took sannyas in Chile in 88, I mean, to be a sannyasi had the same charm as being a pedophile, you know. It was the worst thing that you could do. It was terrible. I actually remember at that age, when I was 20, I went to dinner with, I was being introduced to my girlfriend's parents, you know, when you go as a young man the first time and you're having dinner,
Mm.
sort of trying to get their approval. And then the mother of my girlfriend asked me that if it was true that sannyasins had sexual relationship with animals to purify themselves. You know, and I'm having dinner here trying to impress them. And then it dawns on me this understanding that this woman thinks I'm having sex with animals, you know?
Ay, ay, ay.
That was, yes. When I took sannyas back to 84, 6 months after Osho was in jail.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
was terrible. I remember going to American embassy consulate in São Paulo, where I was living them. Just about 8 or 10 people dancing and singing in front of the embassy. When we gave them a manifesto.
Jogaram fora.
It's so naive, man. So naive. So,
É.
So I think if you're interested in having a respectful career, mentioning Osho probably wouldn't be the smartest thing,
yeah.
at least at that time. And so I think that's the main reason. I think Osho was and still is a very controversial figure. I mean, he wasn't a goody two-shoe enlightened master, you know, like you have nowadays, who are really like sugar-free, you know, totally light diet
É.
versions. I mean, this guy was something else. I mean, you really had to have guts to be with him, and you had to go through an inner transformation to get to that place.
Mhm.
That's my
Wow.
take on that.
Yes, that's beautiful to hear it.
You answered, but I will ask you, how Osho
Yes.
influenced your work as a therapist?
Well, absolutely. I became a therapist because of Osho.
Because of Osho.
Because I dedicated 10 years of my life very intensely to work on myself on any therapeutic tool that was within the sannyas world. You know, so I did everything: encounter, bioenergetics, gestalt, primal, psychodrama, Osho meditations, art therapy. I mean, you mentioned. Well, at that time there weren't family constellations, so I didn't do that. But everything that was available. And then I went to when I went to the United States where I studied. Um, it it just became my way of sharing what had happened to me. You know, being a therapist became a tool for me to share what I had discovered, and what I had discovered was because of Osho. You know, so absolutely. I mean, I don't usually nowadays put Osho in the front because um, for me it's more important the work that came out of Osho's work than having to do some advertising about him. It's not that I denied. I use my sannyas name. Everybody knows I'm a sannyasi, but I'm not like, let's say, doing some sort of proselytism about it. But it's completely embedded into the work that I have and the center that I have in Chile, and it's my biggest influence. I mean, I am who I am as a therapist because of Osho. So I
Hmm.
owe him everything, not only my life as a human being, I owe him my life as a therapist too.
Mhm.
That's
Mhm.
beautiful. I always used to say that Osho saved my life. You know,
Yeah,
Yeah.
he got me.
I use the same phrase.
Yeah, and Miten said also beautiful to us things. He said he not only saved my life, he gave me a new one.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that's
I
beautiful.
completely agree with that. Yeah,
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about your books. You have 6 books,
10.
10 books. Wow,
I have one in
more than,
Portuguese actually. Yeah,
wow.
What's the
yeah,
Where
yeah.
name?
It's called Terapia Corporal Emocional Neo-Reichiana.
Mm.
Yeah, I have one in Portuguese. Well, the book, there are two main lines, I would say. One has to do with the research, with like what I did in the Esalen Tupuna, and the other is, I mean, sharing whatever understandings I have gained through working with myself and working with people. So I have books on relationships, on conflicts in relationships. My last book came out in Spanish a couple months ago about um, self-esteem. And actually, if I tell you the truth, what I do is I write countercultural psychology books disguised as self-help books, you know. So they sell like sort of self-help, but actually it, it's not the classical self-help book. It's more like counter-cultural psychology, you know, like really mining down the basis of the understanding that people and that we have in our culture of what is to grow, and these ideas about getting better and pushing yourself and doing all these things in this very American way of understanding about growth, which is basically denying certain parts of yourself and pushing yourself to excel in something, which I think is absolute bullshit. And then other books have to do with research and interviews. I have, well, the Yesaled Tupuna, and another book, which is also in English, which is interviews with Michael Barnett. Michael Barnett was Somendra, one of Osho's star therapists during the 70s, early 80s. And so I was with him for a while. And so it's interviews with him and his life with Osho, and what I'm doing now with Swaram from the Love Osho podcast is collecting all these interviews of people who were physically close to Osho and that were somehow transformed by his presence and his interaction with them. So, and I like that kind of research. I like doing research in the areas of history and psychology and mysticism.
Yes, Swaram is doing a beautiful job.
Yeah, he did a wonderful job.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes. This interview is very beautiful. His project is very beautiful. He says this journalistic approach. Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
beautiful. We love that.
And his story with Osho is very beautiful. His love
Yeah.
with Osho is very.
Yeah.
Yes, there is a beautiful guy that we interviewed here. It's Vasant Swaha. And
Yes, I know him. Yeah, he used to be
yeah,
one of the guards in Lao Tzu House in the
yes,
Yes.
70s.
we
Yes,
had
and
2 interviews with him. Very beautiful ones. It's a beautiful
nice,
guy. Very beautiful guy. We just love
nice.
him so
Yeah,
much.
I
You
think
have
I
so
saw him. He came to Chile, I don't know, some 15 years ago, probably more. And I saw him too. And I have the same feeling that you're telling me.
For us, Osho is beyond time and space, and
Yes.
he's available even today to sensitive people. How does that feel for you? How do you see Osho's legacy today?
Wow. I mean, that question can be answered in so many levels, but
Yes.
let's see what comes up. I mean, there's a part of me that has to do with my connection with Osho, which is in a way beyond my own comprehension. And having said that, so it's very difficult for me to put it in language because he's all the time here. It's And when I mean all the time here, it's not that he's here as Osho, you know, with the robe and doing like this. And it's the way he touched my life. I mean, it touched me in a way that even I don't understand. I mean, it's like I'm a witness of these thing that happened to me with him that stayed forever. Of course, I went through many processes through that. You know, I had a very strong devotional phase. Then I, I went through what I would call like a critical phase. And then there's devotional critical phase integrated. And for me personally, today, Osho, as you said before, is the man who saved my life and who influenced the way I look at things, influenced the way I work with people. I was a psychology professor for 16 years in the psychology department in a university in Chile, influenced my work with my students. I've been training therapists for the last 23 years. It has influenced how I prepare future therapists. I mean, it influences my relationships with people, the relationships I have and had before with my partners. So it goes beyond what I can describe in language. And in a way, I think for me, he was a door to a certain dimension of existence that was beyond his being in the body and beyond his physical presence, you know. So in a way, Osho is the word that I use to describe a space within myself that it's beyond language and that it's beyond mind and it's beyond understanding, and it has to do, let's say, with the particular way that the energy of life expresses through the system, you know. So if I think, and I'm using the word thinking because it is a thinking process. If I think of the word Osho, what it means to me, it's life. It's the deepest thing that I could connect with, that it was within myself. Of course, Osho at some point was somebody out there, you know, there was this other. And for me, it is not like that anymore. Of course, I have pictures of him and I watch his videos and I read his books and everything. And I remember that there was this Osho out there, but for me now it is an Osho in here. You know, it's the space that is mine. It's absolutely mine, that was awakened by him. You know, and what I do is to share what he woke up in me. You know, and sometimes people ask me, "Oh, are you sharing Osho's work or Osho's vision?" And I said, I don't think I'm qualified to do that, you know. I mean, only Osho is qualified to share Osho's vision or understanding, or I can only share this tiny part that I was able to get and understand, and this huge dimension that goes beyond myself, that is within myself. Well, having said that, another dimension to the same question is how relevant is today. I think it's extremely relevant today, and it's probably more relevant than ever if you look at how things are going around. And in terms that gives an understanding, even people who come through his books or his videos or his podcasts, recorded discourses, and you will get an understanding that goes beyond knowledge. You know, it's this feeling of, yeah, this makes sense, or yeah, this is pointing to something I know, but I'm unable to put it in words. What I don't feel personally today very much in tune has to do with, I don't know, with, let's say, and this is something that I see every year in India, especially with Indian sannyasins, with the sort of standardized ritualistic things around Osho, you know, because I have the feeling that as wonderful and as magnificent as Osho the person was, his work, it was not about him. It was about him when he was in the body, you know, because he was trying to maximize his presence and telling everybody, hey, stop reading Buddha, stop reading Jesus, stop looking for Lao Tse. I'm here. It's the same energy, you know, and you have an awakened person right here and now. And in that sense, of course, all the energy was directed towards him. You know, he was the main thing. But the understanding that I've come to with the years, it was that that was true when he was in the body. But now that he's not in the body anymore, the focus has to be each one's process to find that space within ourselves. So, you know, if we keep on focusing on him as somebody to worship, I think we're missing the point nowadays. I think Osho has the possibility of functioning as an inspiration, turn anybody to go in and find that space and find that beauty and find that peace and find that bliss within themselves. So I think, and this is a personal opinion, for many people who tend to ritualize the relationship with Osho, I think it's misguided because you're setting the foundation to develop a religion. And then you have these dead rituals that people do and they forget about the main thing, which is about waking up. That's my biggest understanding. You know,
Look
Osho's
at the
work is
moon.
about.
Look at the moon. Look at the moon, not at the finger pointing.
Yeah,
to the
exactly.
moon.
That's the biggest understand. I mean, he said that, you know, but the finger, the hand is so beautiful that you wanna chew on it, you know, and I
Yes,
understand it.
of
I
course.
completely understand that. I don't have a judgment about it, but I think that if his work is gonna flourish, is not within the realm of bowing down to his ashes or trying to get fixed in external symbols of sannyas or whatever. It has to do about taking this and using what he was insisting until his last breath, and it's meditation, you know. Find that space within yourself that goes beyond time and space.
Hmm. I have a shortcut that's music, you know.
Yes, yes,
Why, uh, that's so beautiful. This energy field of
yeah,
love. How can I describe it? How can I say it? It's like something much bigger than I can understand, but it's just manifest there.
yeah.
It, and I'll just I did a big research on Osho's music,
Really?
and yeah, and because this is my thing, you know, I'm a
Yes.
lawyer. I'm a lawyer
Yeah.
by profession, so I'm not
Okay.
much into learning therapy.
Yeah.
Though I have done so many groups and processes and everything to work with myself, but it's not my thing, you know.
Mm.
My thing doing all the centers I have worked with was gather together musicians
Yes.
and play music and have fun, you know.
Yes. Yeah.
That's beautiful part of it. You know, recently I found out one song
Yes.
that's sung. I'm gonna send you. We recorded at home. That's
Yeah.
sung in Urdu language.
Uh-huh.
It's called Mere Handam. It's very beautiful, and it's connected to that thing Osho said about Buddha coming after 25 centuries. You must have come across. Then when I heard
Yes.
this song, I was very touched. Recently,
Uh-huh.
uh, we have done 3 interviews with Osho's brother Shailendra,
Yeah, yes, I know him.
and immediately I wrote to him, and he sent me everything, the words, the meaning, and the
Wow,
Osho's
wonderful.
discourse, where he talks about it, and the whole thing, the
Wow.
Japanese seer prophecy and everything. When Osho
Yeah.
dropped his name, Bhagwan,
Yes.
that
Yeah, I
that
remember. Yeah.
you remember, you know the
Yes.
story. Yeah? It's very beautiful, and for us, it's very beautiful the way you see it. it's makes much sense to us.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
beautiful to listen.
I'm absolutely how can I say, grateful, but it's more than grateful to have come across this person. Although I was never physically with him, I arrived in Pune the first time in '95 when he had been gone already for 5 years. And I've been back in Pune 23 times after that. But I mean, for me, what amazes me about it is like this little Indian man from a little town in the middle of India, had experience with himself. And that changed the course of consciousness in the planet, and another little man in Chile, who working in a Catholic community. I mean, the least probably, you know, um, environment to have discovered what he discovered within himself. I mean, it's amazing for me when I actually think about it, and I imagine that for you too, in a way, is the same thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Met Osho in my life in 1996
Wow.
for the first time. In the first meditation, I
Wow.
felt in love
Wow. Wow.
with myself and with Osho.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the same.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the same. The same
Yeah.
love. Yes.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Wow, that's
Viro,
beautiful. I want to keep talking to you forever, man.
forever, for hours and hours, we can talk about Osho and about your life and your researches.
we with this work that's gonna be 3 years already. We've met so many people,
Yeah.
and what amazes us is that very young people. We met a girl in Russia,
Yeah.
and she was shiny,
Yeah.
shiny, very beautifully, just doing dynamic meditation, man.
Yeah.
She was so total in it
Yeah. Yeah.
that
It's amazing. It's amazing.
it's amazing, amazing, amazing.
Yeah. And I mean, I was talking with my partner about it the other day, and then we were talking about what I thought, or what we thought were the determining factors of why sannyasis usually look so alive, because we've been to many other masters and we've been to many other communities, and these people seem to have cut part of themselves to be spiritual, so they look really dry, they look silent, but you have this sort of cemetery silence, everybody's dead, so very quiet. And I think one of the beautiful things about Osho was that he embraced it all. He didn't leave anything behind, and by doing that, he helped each one of us to integrate and embrace all the dimensions of ourselves, not only the light ones, but also the dark ones, And I think that's so beautiful. It's the only spiritual teacher from India that I have known that accepted human beings as a whole. They didn't say, hey, you have to do this discipline, or you have to, train your behavior in such a way, in order to be spiritual, in order to be enlightened, or whatever. And he's the only one I know who completely embraced all the dimensions of humanity.
With celebration.
And with celebration, and with sex, when having fun, and with your darkest emotions, and everything that troubled you. And I mean, such compassion, such gift, so much love in a way, for people, not to impose and a code, a discipline, something strict so that you could get end somewhere. So much respect for human beings. That's what comes to me lately. It's like so much respect for people, you know. Beautiful.
No, no.
The last question, Abiro.
Have another one?
Another one.
We always ask our guests to, it's a kind of instant coffee, like one word for Osho.
One word. Wow. That's difficult.
Yes, yes.
One word. Amazing.
Amazing.
Amazing. Amazing.
Amazing.
Amazing. I mean, I was rereading the Darshan diaries, you know, the personal conversations that Osho had with his disciples. And I like them very much. They weren't ever a really big commercial success, you know.
Mhm.
I don't know why, because for me, it's a treasure trove of beautiful things. And I was looking at the conversation and reading the conversation that he was having with visitors and disciples and everything. And I was amazed at the fact that when he was talking to someone, he was saying something to that person. He didn't have a ready-made discourse. You know, people who talk like I do, you know, in front of people or things, eventually we develop a certain discourse. You know, you have like phrases that are exactly the same that you repeat because they work, or you think they look beautiful in language or whatever. And you have a certain, let's say, yeah, discourse is, I think it's the right word. You have a certain discourse that you repeat within different situations. And I was amazed, you know, at Osho speaking to each person, and he wouldn't repeat himself. I said, if I was talking to, I don't know, 20 people every night, next week I'm going to be repeating myself again and again and again, because human problems are not that new, you know, and not that special. And I was amazed. I was amazed, and I was looking at it, and I thought, from where did he learn this? You know, he had understanding about the functioning of the human psyche that you cannot find in psychology books, and that I have gotten bit of it after 30 years of working with people. And this guy never came out of his room. You know, how did he know about this? And I was looking and reading and reading. Wow, this is really a gem, what he's describing about the inner process. How does he know this? So, and he's not repeating himself. He's not giving a ready-made answer that worked with some other guy 2 months ago, and then he says it again because it's more or less the similar problem. And I still don't understand it, you know. And so I'm amazed, because the word amazing for me, it contains this element of surprise, of not being able to comprehend. It's a mystery.
Yeah.
Amazing mystery, if you allow me
Yes.
to.
2 words.
Amazing mystery. You
Mystery.
know, I've heard Osho, somebody asking him, you say something to someone, then someone else asks the same question, you say something totally different. And he says, I don't answer questions, I answer people.
Yeah, I know.
Every moment is a new moment.
Yeah. And I remember when he was at the ranch, when he was having interviews with the world press, and they would ask him a question and he would give the answer, and then they would stop because they were recording, and they would say to him, so we are going to now record the journalist asking the question, and you can answer whatever you want. And Osho would never answer the same thing that he just answered 2 minutes ago. You know, the guy would repeat exactly the same question for the camera, and then Osho would go on with something completely different. And the guys were at loss because they were trying to edit and said, but you're giving me a different answer. And if you ask me again, I will give you a different answer. Well, I guess
That's
that's being in
Osho.
the moment, no?
Yes.
So
Yes.
maybe someday we have another one with you.
Yes,
Yes, yes,
anytime. Yeah.
yes. Very
Exactly.
beautiful. We thank you very much
Oh,
for
thank
your
you,
When you
guys.
time.
come
Thank you
to
very much.
Brazil, just let us know.
Yes,
Yeah,
sure.
You come to
I think
Brazil.
I'll go May next year. I'll go to Belo Horizonte. I was once in a congress in Florianopolis.
Wow, that's very close by
Oh,
to my place.
Yeah, yeah,
to my place too.
Yes,
yeah,
just in the middle. Yeah, just
Yes.
in the middle.
yeah. And I
So
like
Vic,
Brazil very much. I like
so
Brazilian people and I like the food. I think it's
oh,
amazing, and I like the Brazilian winters much
yeah.
more than the Chilean ones.
Oh,
Great, great. So whenever you come, let us know.
I will let you know. Yes,
But
definitely.
Brazil
Thank you
is
very
so.
much.
Yes, thank you
thank
very much.
you.
Send
Thank
our
you.
love to Bacera.
Yes, I will.
Yes,
Okay.
Thank you.
thank
See
you.
you.
See you.
See
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye, Vikrant.